How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Liberty Bowl. So, we know that the globalist elites have been basically trying to normalize the idea of pedophilia and make it seem like it's not such a bad thing after all, since the whole Epstein, incident has come to light, right? So, they've been trying to normalize it in our schools, as we're going to see here in just a minute. They've been trying to normalize it on a cultural level, as as we see in TV, the media, entertainment, all that type of stuff. They've been trying to normalize it on a legal scale, and essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to once this stuff is going to eventually come out with the whole Epstein client list, hopefully, fingers crossed, right? It's going to eventually come out as long as we don't forget about it, as long as we don't just let it slide, right? So that's essentially what they're hoping for, but they know that this is too big to basically let slide. So now they have to go into the process of trying to normalize this type of stuff, right? So the UN just put together an advisory group called the International Commission of Jurists, and what they did was they put together a report basically outlining how the rest of the world should treat crime and punishment when it refers to the conduct associated with sex, reproduction, drug use, HIV, homelessness, poverty, the whole Marxist movement type stuff. And, it's basically everything that you would imagine it's going to be, right? So we're going to go ahead and check this out. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to check out a video from from a school board meeting in Ontario, Canada, where they're basically discussing whether or not to keep or remove the book Gender Queer from the shelves of the school library, right? So before we get into that, we're going to go ahead and get into this. Be belated 420, guys.
A response to concerns raised as in terms of the use of these resources in our schools. So the title that's actually being questioned this evening, Genderqueer, was actually reviewed during the 2021-2022 school year from a concern that was raised by a community member at that time. The committee that was formed in response to the concerns read the book and, in consideration of DDSP's Indigenous Education and Human Rights Policy, concluded that the book was found to align with the district's policies and can remain in distribution.
Low jobs align with your policies? Low jobs align with your human rights policies? You're ridiculous!
We cannot answer your question.
Call the cops, get me out of here, I don't care, shut up!
Pedophile, child predator, I don't care. Again, we need to be respectful. We're going to
Be respectful of the people asking the questions!
I ask the trustees to please move to the other room, please. Trustees, I believe I am calling a second recess.
Bye! Thanks for standing up for the kids! Good job! Good job standing up for the kids! Guess you guys don't remember who paid your wages, hey? The cowards are leaving. Bye. People or immigrants would it still be okay? No, fucking disgusting case.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
We're losing our democracy!
More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
Wake up!
Before we get into that, let's get into this. Alrighty, so that what you just saw was a bunch of pissed off conservative parents up there in our neighbor to the north, Ontario, Canada, at the Durham School Board, where they are once again discussing the topic of the book Genderqueer and whether or not to remove it from the library, right? So as you saw, they decided to keep it. I mean, let's keep in mind that this is liberal Canada here. I mean, if anything, they're far, far more advanced on the liberal scale than, America. But, keep in mind when I do say liberal, I do mean modern liberalism. I don't mean, actual classical liberalism, which is basically the principles that America was founded on. I mean modern liberalism, as in rules for thee but not for me, where basically your intersectional diversity means more than merit, and basically you're judged off of the color of your skin as opposed to the content of your character, because critical race theory says so, right? So obviously these parents are not happy with the school board, and rightfully so. I mean, this type of stuff, it's purely indoctrination. If you've ever glanced at the book Gender Queer, there's lots of sexually suggestive and really, to be honest, sexually explicit um cartoon cartoon drawings and stuff like that. And it's doesn't really have anything to do with actual reproductive health, anything like that. Really, none of the sex ed that goes on here in American schools has anything really to do with reproductive health anymore. If that was the case, you wouldn't see such a huge influx of LGBTQ plus IA, whatever the hell you want to call it. It really doesn't matter, because it's all just made up anyway. Kids, right? We're seeing such a large influx of them because of the fact that this type of stuff is being pushed, right? We're not in American schools, and basically Western schools, we're not teaching our kids about reproductive health. We're teaching them about reproductive methods, or if anything, we're teaching about non-reproductive methods, like this type of stuff, and this type of stuff, and I don't know any other type of hand gestures you could come up with, but that's what we're basically teaching our kids. We're not teaching them about the health factors that come with sex, things like STDs. We're teaching them about how to have sex, how to have the kinky sex, how to have the weird type sex. That's what we're teaching our kids, and it's viewed, it's a pushed through the lens of being socially acceptable of other people's life choices and stuff like that. But at the same time, these are children, right? So when it comes to liberty, I don't care what type of sex you choose to have. I don't care what you choose to do in your bedroom. I don't care if you choose to have one partner, two partners. If a partner has two tits and a dick, I don't care. I don't care what you choose to do, right? Don't tell my damn kids about it. That's all we're asking. Don't tell our kids about it. If it comes to normalization and stuff like that, society doesn't care about you as they should, right? Society shouldn't care about really anybody other than the fact that society continues to grow and develop and does not collapse. That should be really the only concern when it comes to other people's life choices in society, right? So when it comes to the gender identity type stuff being taught in school, those are the types of life choices that when it comes to children should not be pushed, right? If you want to go and have speeches, and fucking, if you want to go hold your drag queen story fucking breakfast, whatever the hell you want to do in your adult clubs and all that type of shit, if you want to have your gay pride parades all year long, as long as it's in your private facilities, right? Don't be doing that shit in the middle of the streets. Don't be fucking doing it in fucking elementary schools of all places. Basically the idea of common decency, right? The idea of not corrupting the youth, right? Because as we all know, the youth are highly, highly impressionable. They basically soak up everything like a sponge, because the way that their brains develop is by what they pick up from the external world, right? They have a mild sense of right and wrong based off of what their parents have instilled in them. But as we see with most modern families, most parents don't instill much of anything other than here, sit down and watch this. So what we're seeing here in schools is basically a sexual indoctrination rather than a sexual education, right? And it's basically it's planned. It's part of the Frankfurt School of Western destruction of civilization, right? Through re-education and re-indoctrination and a revisionist history and all this and that type stuff. And basically we have to divide everybody into their own little boxes and their own little unique groupings, right? And it's basically the whole idea of divide and conquer. So this isn't just something that's really taking place on a local scale, or really just in an America and Canada type scale, nothing like that. It's as we're going to see here in just a second, the United Nations is even trying to push this type of these types of criminal law and prescriptions when it comes to the use of law when it comes to things like sexual orientation, gender identity, drug use, whatever the hell you want to say, right? And so this was basically drafted up by a group of UN advisors. The group is called the International Commission of Jurists, and essentially what it is it's guidelines, right? It's essentially them just trying to say, well, this is the way that you guys should be, enforcing your laws when it comes to things like sex, drugs, rock and roll, yeah, I threw the last part in for jokes, but either way, when it comes to things like sex, drugs, the spreading of sexually transmitted diseases, all that type of stuff, the types of ways that you should be enforcing laws, right? So let's go ahead and check this shit out. It's yeah, pretty interesting shit. I'm gonna go ahead and leave the link in the description so you guys could check it out for yourselves. But yeah, it's crazy shit. Alrighty, so for the sake of keeping this a little bit short, we're going to go ahead and just skip through the first couple parts and go straight over to the stuff that really matters in part 3. Right, so the first couple parts, I mean, you could go ahead and read it. I'll leave the link in the description below. You could go ahead and check it out for yourself. But the first couple parts basically just deal with the, like a definition, stuff like that, the reasoning, who this paper, who this report is intended for, and basically how the law should be applied and stuff like that. Right, and it basically talks about intent and all that type of stuff, and mitigating factors, all that type of super liberal jazz. And keep in mind, none of this stuff would apply to people like Trump or conservatives, nothing like that. When it comes to them, intent doesn't matter. The crime doesn't even matter, right? We're gonna investigate them no matter what, and we're gonna find something. So yeah, it's all just rules for thee but not for me type stuff, right? So special part 3, application to the criminalization of conduct associated with sex, reproduction, drug use, HIV, homelessness, and poverty. All right, so this first part, it's principle 14 and 15 really more or less just kind of deal with, reproductive health, as they call it, aka abortions, right? But number 16 here, principle 16, is where it really starts to get interesting, right? So consensual sexual conduct, right? So this first paragraph basically just kind of refers to, the types of sex people have, extramarital, premarital, gay, straight, transsexual, multiple partners, whatever the fuck, that type of shit, and basically saying that it shouldn't be criminalized. And then where it really starts to get interesting here is these second paragraphs, right? So with respect to the enforcement of criminal law, any prescribed minimum age of consent to sex must be applied in a non-discriminatory manner. Enforcement may not be linked to the sex or gender of participants or age of consent to marriage. Moreover, sexual conduct involving persons below the domestically prescribed minimum age of consent to sex may be consensual in fact, if not in law. In this context, the enforcement of criminal law should reflect the rights and capacity of persons under 18 years of age to make decisions about engaging in consensual sexual conduct and their right to be heard in matters concerning them. Pursuant to their evolving capacities and progressive autonomy, persons under 18 years of age should participate in decisions affecting them with due regard to their age, maturity, and best interests, with specific attention to non-discrimination guarantees. All right. So generally, the common sense would tell you that, stuff dealing with their bodily autonomy and, dealing with their best interests is generally held with their parents, right? But of course, that's not what they're trying to do here. What the entire goal of this is to separate the children from the parents. Basically, their whole motto is that children should be raised by the community and not by the parents. So that way, they get the socialization of the community, and basically, they have the best interest of the community at heart rather than the best interest of, I don't know, say their family, right? So that's essentially what they want. It's a whole Marxist type thing, and basically, they need to separate the kids from their parents because, of course, that brings about control, right? Just like the whole thing with keeping people poor, things like minimum wage, things like food stamps, things like welfare, the welfare state, all that type of stuff, keeping people poor. They also need to keep people as part of the herd, as opposed to as a part of their individual family unit, right? So that's basically what they do, is they divide and conquer. They basically put you into a little box. They take away your name and give you a number, and that's essentially how they control you, is by taking away your humanity, right? So as as we see, they're basically trying to normalize the idea of pedophilia, and they're trying to do it on a grand, sweeping, multinational level, right? So what this kind of symbolizes to me is the fact that they're trying to normalize pedophilia before, because before the whole Epstein shit comes out, because the people, the citizens, we're not going to forget. We're not going to let that one slide. We're not just until the client list comes out. Basically, everyone in a seat of power is, in my opinion, a pedophile of some sort. Everyone that's ever been associated with Epstein in one way or another, in my opinion, is going to be a pedophile. And I don't really care who it is. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what good you've done for the world. pedophilia is unforgivable in my opinion, right? And so we're seeing here that they're trying to normalize that. So basically, they know that we're not going to give it up, and they know that eventually a lot of these names are going to slowly start to drip out here and there. And yeah, they want to normalize it beforehand, so that way when it does finally come out, they don't look like such monsters, right? So let's go down to principle number 17 here. This one was a bit interesting too. So, sex work. The exchange of sexual services between consenting adults for money, goods, or services, and communication with another about advertising an offer for or sharing premises with another for the purpose of exchanging sexual services between consenting adults for money, goods, or services, whether in a public or private place, may not be criminalized, absent coercion, force, abuse of authority, or fraud. Criminal law may not prescribe the conduct of third parties who directly or indirectly, for receipt of a financial or material benefit under fair conditions without coercion, force, abuse of authority, or fraud, facilitate, manage, organize, communicate with another, advertise, provide information about, provide, or rent premises for the purpose of the exchange of sexual services between consenting adults for money, goods, or services. Unless your name is Andrew Tate, right? But like I said, a lot of this stuff it's basically the type of stuff that has been criminalized for a long time. I mean, when it comes to things like sex work, anyone will tell you it's the oldest profession in human history, right? And so I mean, ultimately, when it comes to grown adults, I don't really care, But the whole reason that I read this whole thing when it comes to sex work is because for one, like I said, I wanted to throw in that little joke about unless your name is Andrew Tate, and for two, because of the fact, like I said, with the Epstein connection, right? When it comes to sex work, so just in the couple paragraphs before, they defined that a person under the age of 18 should be entitled to make their own decisions when it comes to their sexual bodily autonomy and stuff like that, their progressive autonomy as they put it. And then in the very next paragraph, they go on to define, they go on to try and normalize sex work and the use of pimps, right? So again, like I said, they're trying to normalize the whole, Epstein, the whole pedophilia type thing. And as we just saw, on the last video clip, they're trying to do it in our schools, right? It's not just on a legislative level. They're trying to do it on an education level as well. They're trying to do it on a societal level. Basically, they want to completely normalize this. And I mean, whether or not they're successful, I mean, in my opinion, I believe that this is pretty much kind of, humanity, or maybe America or Western civilization's breaking point. I believe the victimization of children, the gender mutilation of children, the sexual indoctrination, and eventual child sex trafficking. I believe that's probably about where Western civilization is going to have to draw the line, right? Otherwise, we're going to face total and utter destruction. We're already facing total and utter destruction on the whole war front and stuff like that. On the whole global hegemony and stuff like that, we're already starting to lose our influence. We used to be the shining beacon of the principles of democracy and the principles of freedom and all that type stuff, right? Well, now we've become the laughing stock, right? We've come to the point where basically tolerance has become has become paradoxical, as I mentioned in that video, last week, right? Tolerance has basically become paradoxical to the point where we are so tolerant that we now tolerate intolerant people, therefore negating, the principles of tolerance, right? Well, if you guys made it this far, you guys must be true fans of the show, and I definitely appreciate you. If you guys are new to this show, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you're a fan of the show, make sure you guys hit that like button on the way out. It's definitely going to help with the algorithms, as I'm sure you guys would probably assume based on content like mine, involving both cannabis and right-leaning politics. I'm probably not too algorithmically favored in the YouTube sphere, so if you would also maybe just go ahead and just hit that share button, post it on your Facebook wall, your Twitter walls, your truth socials. Go ahead and truth this out, share the truths and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it'd mean the world to me, and I'd really appreciate it. So again, happy belated 420, you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and hit an extra snap on the way out for you. Yeah, if you guys got one packed up, go ahead and smoke with me. All right, I appreciate all you guys. Fuck off. There you go.